the president, as we know, continues to double down, triple down, quadruple down, and so on his base. He believes that that's his survival is based, he believes, on keeping that group of supporters happy. But as Frank Luntz, who's a Republican pollster, as you know, Nicole, told my colleague just the other day, he has never seen a politician more out of step with a moment than President Trump is right now with these protests and the energy behind them, sort of the crusade to try to call out this racial injustice in law enforcement and across American society. Indeed, that's systemic racism. So setting aside even any moral arguments, if we were just simply to look at this as a political calculation, it's bad politics for the president to be so out of step as he appears to be. Today, he was in the Rose Garden. He had this executive order. He received some praise from some Democrats like Val Demings for the database of police officers who have been written up for misconduct for using excessive force. I think most people agree that's a good step, but it's just a step. This was a pretty small measure, and I think the optics of it can't be overlooked. Previously, prior to coming out to the Rose Garden, President Trump did meet with some of the families of those who have been the victims of police misconduct, but none of them attended the ceremony. Instead, the president was flanked again by law enforcement officials and police unions, the people that he is trying to court and trying to count on their support this November, who backed him largely last time as well. And we're seeing very little in terms of actual engagement with these protests that are still out in the streets. And as a final point, today in the Rose Garden, and he rambled on repeatedly, it turned into, as you said, a campaign rally just behind the West Wing there. After he left his scripted remarks, he started blasting Democrats and the media, as he often does. He also returned to the language that these protests are full of looting and violence. And that simply hasn't been the case outside of those first few days, for large part. An exception here or there, of course. But these are peaceful protests drawing from a wide swath of America that enjoy massive public support. And it seems like the president simply is unable or unwilling to see that.
Let me put up a picture of what Jonathan Lemire just described. The president was flanked by just white men, law enforcement officials, and I think, as Jonathan just reported, one African-American law enforcement official is seen there in the images. If there's a wider shot and that picture is vastly different, we will look for it and show it to you. But this is what we saw today in the Rose Garden. And Kim Atkins, I know Nancy Pelosi put out a statement, and it seemed to represent that she's done grading Donald Trump on a curve. Of course, it's good that he met with families. Of course, it's good that he appeared sympathetic, as Yamiche Alcindor reported. Of course, it's good that he did something. But this is a moment of a public, 76% of the American people and 76% of this country hasn't agreed on much over the last 4 or 5 years, wanting to see something dramatic done. This wasn't that.
No, it was not. And to your point on denial, it seems that the president wants to deny anything that he sees as going against his campaign message. And his campaign message is that he is a law and order president, just as he's always said he would be, and that he is courting and relying on the support from law enforcement. And he sees anything that goes too far in terms of reform as being anti-police. He wants to, his gut is to make the police stronger, is to give them more. Even when he was describing today some of part of his proposal that would increase funding for training on de-escalation techniques, he was talking about non-deadly techniques, but he said very strong, very powerful non-deadly techniques. His gut is to talk about the power and the force of the police officers, not turning that down, which is what the public is calling for. And also today, it wasn't just a campaign rally, but he made statements, including right at the end when he said, we can't deny our heritage, we can't deny our history. That's a call about the tearing down of Confederate monuments that's been happening, which he sees as something that goes against what his base wants. So there's this, while there is a denial that there is systemic racism in the criminal justice system and every other system in America, there's this, at the same time, just pushing the division, the racial divisions that he thinks is a political winner for him. And that underlines all of this, and that prevents him from giving a broad-throated support for some of the reforms that people are calling for.
You know, David Jolly, I think it's more than pushing division. I think it's coming down on the side, on the side of the people that want, I mean, to use the word protecting our heritage, to stand there with a crowd that does not look like the folks who've taken to the streets. You know, NBC News reported that he has said inside the West Wing, you know, these protesters aren't my people. He does not view the will of 76% of the country as his problem because he doesn't think those people are available to him. And he's probably right. But people should not look at what he did today as anything other than dress up remarks about protecting our heritage. And I thought the most sinister thing he said was, you don't even know how badly you want law and order. People don't even know how badly they want it. To me, that's him saying the quiet part out loud. I'm about to show you. And I think anyone that is aghast at what he did in Lafayette Square should watch this space.
Donald Trump is engaged in pure, raw political calculus. That's all. He is not a leader for our time. He is not a leader in this moment. And we shouldn't look to him for anything more than what we saw today. The unifying call here, you know, when he calls for law and order, the imagery that he knows he's evoking among some in his base is white police officers cracking down on black crime and black assailants. That's the imagery he's creating. The reality is law and order's first cousin is justice and swift justice. And the unifying call in this moment is for a political leader to come down on the side of swift justice for George Floyd and for those who took George Floyd's life. And, you know, the other cousin of law and order, we talk about the cops being the law and order wing, but it's also prosecutors, it's attorneys. And do they have the tools and the resources they need? And does the law allow them to prosecute people who engage in homicide, regardless of whether they have the uniform or not? And if Donald Trump's going to miss the opportunity, I think it's there also for Democrats to come down on the side of swift justice. I'm a little wary, and I heard Figluzzi at the top of the last hour as well. I'm a little wary of politicians who by legislation seek to proscribe certain use of force techniques, because we know there's a balance. We do want law enforcement to have the tools necessary in critical situations and not have to think, what are the public policy implications of Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi in this situation? But what we do know is that the American people know that there are incidents like George Floyd. We see them all the time, and these should be prosecuted. And Donald Trump and Republicans have an opportunity to come down on that side of law and order as well. They're going to miss this, and it's because it's a pure political calculus that they have to replicate the demographic electoral behavior of the 2016 election. They have no other strategy but to divide the nation culturally, and this issue is teed up perfectly for somebody with little or no morals like President Donald Trump.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.